part-time Christian. You won't fight full-time devil.
You the joke. Is it 31st? Oh, sorry. On the 10th, no contract. No, this ties into the character conversation of the Ghanaian people, doesn't it? The search for who the Ghanaian is and whether you could swear on the character of the Ghanaian as in the past. How so swiftly things have changed these days that you can't really trust. It's even scary to recommend people for opportunities and for gigs, because sometimes people just go and mess things up and it mars your relationship,
Indeed, Caleb. And the reference you're making is to that interesting article in the Daily Graphic. I find it interesting because I sincerely think that a lot of our problems we'll see the beginning of the solution, a lot of the problems in this country and even our personal individual problems, when we change our mindset, when we change our values, when we change our character. And if you go to the chorus of the English chorus of Efremamu's song, So Mambe, he says, for a nation to succeed and for a nation to fail, it depends on the character of its own people. And so character is crucial even in nation development.
Let's take that article again.
Yeah, so the article is titled, What is the National Character of Ghana? And it comes across as rhetorical. It's on page 7 and continues on page 10 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. And it's written by Enimil Ashong. So I'm going to read the entire article with you. Okay, so on November 27, 2013, the Prime Minister of Latvia, and I'll avoid his name this time around, resigned because the roof of a supermarket collapsed, killing 54 people. He said he took the political and moral responsibility. That to me was, quote, culture in action. His action reflected the society's norm. Same way in Germany, it was not unusual that German President Christian Wolff was investigated in 2012 because his friend was alleged to have paid for his hotel room and his food while on vacation. Accused of favoritism and unethical behavior, he resigned. That, I repeat, is culture. It reflects the national character of Germans. Will this happen in Ghana? What is the national character of Ghana? In June 2014, journalist Kweku Sechiado, addressing graduating students of the Ashesi University, summed it up this way, quote, in our country, no one takes responsibility for anything, and so we plunder to the accompaniment of brass bands and pay the victims to dance, unquote. That unfortunately seems to be our culture now. Duping our neighbor, employer, even total strangers, is the pervasive or collective character of Ghana. Why does every Ghanaian political appointee steal state money? Kweku's prognosis is that Ghanaians have lost our sense of outrage. His words are true. What he should have said or emphasized is that we have lost that which used to be the Ghanaian culture, that which used to identify our humanity and African identity. We used to abhor violence. Indeed, we used to fear the sight of blood. Today, we steal from the pockets of accident victims while they are in their death throes bleeding. The story below was posted by a certain Leah Stout on November 26. An anthropologist conducted an experiment with some children from an African tribe. He placed a basket filled with delicious fruits near the trunk of a tree and told them, the first child to reach the tree and touch the basket will win all the fruits. When the anthropologist gave the starting signal, he expected all the children to run to get the fruit. To his great surprise, they began walking together, hand in hand, to the tree. They touched the basket together and shared the fruit. He asked them why they had done that, when each of them could have won the fruit basket for himself or to share with his family. The children all answered in unison, Ubuntu. The anthropologist then began interviewing the tribe's adults. It turned out that Ubuntu, in their language and their culture, means I am because we are. In other words, the children were saying that based on the teachings they received from their parents and grandparents, how could any of them be happy if the others have nothing? I call that national character. So this is the paragraph titled Swear by the Ghanaian. And it reads, not very many years ago, you could swear by the Ghanaian. There were crimes which you could, quote, thrust your hand in the fire and swear they could not be committed by a Ghanaian once upon a time. Honesty was our national identity. Only recently, I published on this page the story of how in 1992 at the JFK airport in New York, I was waved on to board the flight without a body search. The security officer took one look at the bio page of my passport and muttered, Ghanaian. With relief on his face, he motioned for me to Nigeria Airways flight. Were thoroughly, well, I guess there's an omission. He motioned for me to Nigeria Airways flight. So there's an omission. Were thoroughly frisked and their hand luggage literally emptied for examination of its account. I suppose he's saying that other passengers going to that flight. Right. Now, piety was almost the national ID of the Ghanaian. Sad to narrate, we have lost it. In our quest for a return to those days, the majority of concerned commentators had one voice. Let's teach religious and moral education in schools. Ask any teacher or WAEC examiner, while hundreds of thousands perform miserably in all other subjects, the worst candidate in religious and moral education gets a credit score. Yet the greatest number of bad boys and girls are religion and moral education students, formerly called Bible knowledge. Apparently, the phenomenon is not new. As far back as the 18th century, Noah Webster, the famous lexicographer, counseled that in selecting men for office, let principle be your guide. Regard not the particular sect or denomination of the candidate. What am I driving at? I am making a point that the teaching of religion is not a panacea for good moral conduct. The best religion is taught in church. That is my solution, rather than religion. I guess it means the best solution is not taught in church. So his solution is, rather than religion, I'm advocating a course of study that will lay emphasis on, quote, principles and values of life, differentiating between religiosity and spirituality. In my approach, emphasis by the teacher will be on cause and effect. For instance, that when you sleep with your neighbor's spouse, some other person will sleep with yours, or someone you cherish very much at some future date. Interesting example. The emphasis should not be on belief systems, but on the moral principles of life that guided the conduct of great men and women. So interestingly, the writer is the executive director of the Center for Communication and Culture. He shares his email, but I don't see his name.
Okay, so I a few things jump at me from this conversation, right? Where we are losing our character and the reputation we had in the past. Some examples he used of, passers-by, or when there's an accident scene, people will get to the victims and steal from their pockets. We have friends who have found themselves in unfortunate situations, and instead of Ghanaians around reaching out to help, you find them reaching into their pockets to pick their phones and the little money they have on them. That's one point that really jumped at me. When you have an issue, you stop by anywhere, people come around, they want you to pay them before they even support you or give you any assistance. That's a real part of the whole conversation that really jumped at me. And then the socialization of the kids, what kind of example or values that the people are being taught with the Ubuntu example. So norms or character, values that are handed down from generation to another. We seem to be losing that, and we seem to be focusing a lot more on money, regardless where it is coming from. And what we are losing sight of is where he pointed to the example that in traveling somewhere many years ago, he got to the security checkpoint. Security guy looks into his passport and says, "Oh, Ghanaian, come on, go in." And we've taken that for granted. That was such an asset to have, that just because of who you are or where you are from, you are accorded a certain level of privilege or access because you are known to exhibit certain qualities of honesty, integrity. Of course, we've always showed up late. We have a reputation of being late, but as for being truthful and honest, that one we had it in our basket until I don't know how recently we've started losing all this. So it's quite an interesting read, Godfred, and I really am hoping that
So
we
just
can
quickly,
get back
I want
to
to
a part of
unpack
that.
certain themes from this brilliant article by Mr. Enimel. Exactly, and we're grateful that he placed the things in perspective. You can draw from the article a certain definition of culture, and culture simply is our way of life. So I'll name one theme: culture. You look at selfishness, you look at greed, and I'm isolating those two for a reason. And then you look at, what was I going to say? Hypocrisy. So if you look at, he cited the examples of the two presidents and what Kweku Sechiado, a renowned journalist, said over a decade ago. Oh, that brings to mind accountability. But what is our culture? Is our culture that of accountability? That's a good question to ask. Is our culture that of selfishness? So I'm now roping all of these together. Is our culture that of greed? Is our culture that of disunity? And when you talk about our culture, what does a Ghanaian person's word mean? Which goes to the example that if you could put your hand in fire and say, I'm a Ghanaian, I didn't do X, Y, Z. So these are things that I believe that we have to reflect on. I love the example with the anthropologists. Okay, somebody from a different culture now comes to do a test, puts fruits in a basket and says, you guys, whoever is able to get there first picks the fruit, can have all of them, or touches the basket, can have all of them. This is a concept, a typical concept of capitalism. We're pushing individualistic tendencies. We're pushing selfishness. We're pushing greed. Okay? But what did those African children do? They shocked the anthropologists, meaning that there was an expected outcome. But that was not the outcome that the anthropologists discovered. They counted all these, concepts of selfishness, greed. They walked together, went to the fruit and shared it among themselves. And when they were asked why, they referred to another interesting part of culture, which is education. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the formal education where we sit in the classroom, but education from their elders. And for me, that is very critical, because young people are being modeled by the older generations. We are all watching what our parents, what our leaders, what our managers, what our seniors are doing. And if the culture we are observing from them, the way of life is greed, is zero accountability, is selfishness, is hypocrisy, then we are going to learn that. Now, the example he cites about religion, where he suggested that in order to deal with the moral decadence of society, we sought to introduce a religious education. I guess the lesson is that it is about the substance, the quality of what is being taught. And so, yes, you can have people who can recite Bible verses or Quran verses verbatim. But the question is, is that the kind of education that will translate into reforming or giving them the proper values that will influence their culture? If that is not so, then we'll find ourselves in a situation where children are proudly announcing that, yes, they cheat during exams, or even the reports from the Ghana Education Service itself shows that they had to, increase vigilation. And the results of that was a lot of results being withheld and cancelled. And remember, my point was that we cannot blame the children for any of that.
Well, to some extent.
Because this is a culture that we are teaching them. We are teaching them to pursue empty degrees. So it doesn't matter if you immerse yourself in the education. So long as you cut corners and you get the degrees that you cannot proudly walk around with, it's fine. So cutting corners, being obsessed with empty degrees, not putting ourselves through the work. You know, there's a quote that is associated with a former British Prime Minister. I guess she was the female at the time, Margaret Thatcher, where she lamented about when she was growing up, people were concerned about what they could do. Young people were concerned about the opportunities, what they could do. And the shifting trend to where what I can be, to that notion or to that concept. Does it matter what you can be? Is that really the true definition of your identity? Is that what is going to mold your character? Is that the self that you are preoccupied with, or what you can do, which goes to your contribution to society? Because remember, it's a communal global village, whatever you call it. It's a communal world, right? From your community to the global aspect of it. So the contributions that we are making individually, what we are doing, for me, and in my agreement with her, matters more important. It matters more than what we become.
Yeah. That's a lot of food for thought, Godfred. Interesting article, and in the unpacking, we're talking about the emphasis, the socialization, the culture, and what goes into the building of a national character, and why we must jealously go back to what we are fast losing if we've not lost already.
So just before you go to, just to conclude, so for me, I like problems, I like challenges, because I believe that in itself presents an opportunity for us to think about the solutions, to come up with the opportunities. And so long as we've got life and our brains are working, we can do that. For me, it's a moment, reading that article is a moment to reflect on our identity as Ghanaians, our civic responsibility, and reflect on the words of Ephraim Amu, that for a nation to prosper, for a nation to fail, it depends on our character.
I hold a very cynical view of who we are. Yeah. But look, the most important thing is, can we be better?
Yes.
Okay, can we be better people? I don't think in this era that we find ourselves, forming a national character is a simple matter.
Yeah.
If you look at the countries that have formed national character, it takes decades and perhaps centuries of following a certain line of thinking, which is dominant. Okay, it's taught in school, it's part of family life. We are very, very much apart in that regard. What I am teaching in my house is different from what you are teaching in your household. It's different from what Kakra is teaching in her household. There might be certain basic elements that we might have in common. But I think the path to building a national character is one that we are very far away from. I don't want to say I disagree with Mr. Enemalashon, as being the party, he's way more experienced in life than I am. So, he's seen a lot more of what Ghana used to be and what Ghana is. So he's in a much better place to make those comparisons. But from where I sit, I think there are some things that we do well, okay, that we could also improve on. I think Ghanaians generally could do better supporting ourselves. I as somebody who moves around a bit, sometimes you end up realizing that the best help you get comes from people who are not Ghanaians. Ghanaians are very, I'm trying to mind my business here. Why are you trying to get me into trouble? Or I'm trying to mind my business here. Just mind your business. Okay. And I guess that has become what we are now. We are a very individualistic group. at the moment. We are trying to figure it out for ourselves. And I guess that is why we could have a conversation about harmony and what we see as national harmony. Okay, what we see as peace. I remember during my during a time in school, we're trying to define what is peace.
Right.
And it's not an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
What is harmony? And
peace.
as we evolve as a country, as we grow as a people,
Violence.
it becomes a lot more complicated. So for me, it's very simple. We need to perhaps grow to support ourselves a bit more.
Yeah.
Are we buying Ghana more? Are we learning Ghana more?
Okay.
Are we expanding Ghana more
Okay.
in terms of what we want to do? Perhaps that, for me, those are the little things that we could start with. You know, where then you look around you and say, this is what Ghana is. This is what Ghana looks like. This is a feel of Ghana. And then have that feeling also of Ghanaianness towards
Each other.
Other than that,
Because we seem to excel towards others. We seem to be very hospitable and generous towards people we don't really
because
know.
they're also towards us. Look, I'll tell you something. When I was going to school, I got stuck at an airport somewhere as a student. I had never been to that part of the world before. And so I'm at an airport sitting by myself, confused. I don't speak the language. Most people don't speak English at the time. And I was genuinely lost. I was waiting for I didn't know what to do. I was confused. Somebody walks up to me and says, bro, you look lost, in English. And I'm like, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going here, here, here. And he's like, okay.
Like that.
I'm from Togo.
Oh.
I was like, oh, okay. It's like, I'll take you. So we go, this person picks a taxi, puts me in the taxi, takes me to where he's going. He says, look, you are tired, sleep. He gave me his bed, sat on his sofa, slept on the,
You were safe.
fed me. The following morning, he was like, look, let's go to where you're going. Puts me in another cab, goes, guides me through school registration because he spoke the native language. And then he's one of my best friends in the world today. Herman. You understand?
What
And
nationality?
he's Togolese.
Togolese, okay.
Okay.
Let me read this message to tie into what you were saying quickly. It says, I'm listening to your program about a year ago in Dubai. I missed my bus. I met 2 Ghanaians who showed no interest in helping. 3 Chinese women eventually guided me to the right place. The experience struck me sharply and stayed with me for a very long time.
I'll tell a second story. When I was covering the World Cup in Brazil and French, and I'll punish you for that later because you wouldn't let me sleep. You and Benadavle. I lost my passport on a flight. I was with 3 Ghanaians. We're flying from Sao Paulo to Salvador. So I lost my passport. So I had myself, there's another Ghanaian. So basically we're on the same aisle. And I was like troubled. Now there was a Brazilian lady in front of me like this.
Yeah.
The Ghanaians left me on the flight. I had been with them from
Throughout.
Sao Paulo. They left.
Wow.
This random person
You didn't know
I
from
did not
anywhere.
know from Adam stayed with me, took me to the Federal and Civil, because apparently what I didn't even know at the time was there are 2 different types of police. One handles this, one handles that. So I went to the wrong one. It's like, no, you have to go here. Help me write the report in Portuguese. Gave her number to the people that if indeed my passport does show up, they should call her and that she will find me.
Wow.
2 weeks, this one found me.
Wow.
Got me my passport.
No kidding. Your Ghanaian friends?
Nobody even called to bother to say, Charlie, I could work my passport. No. Meanwhile, we had been living in the same rooms, eating the same food,
Charlie.
covering the same World Cup. These were my colleagues.
No, that's
They
sad.
left me there.
No, that's sad. No, but there's something you said that excited me, that there are things that we excel at, there are things we're good at that we must focus on doing better, and there are those that we are not so good at that we should be probably pushing someone. That's why I want to invite listeners to share some experiences and issues, or point out issues you think we can be doing better with.
I just think that, look, there's an opportunity. Look, if I look at some of the things that we do, so this year we've done quite a few things, right? Yeah. We've done fairs.
Yes, Agri-Fair. We've done This is Ghana.
This is Ghana.
Yes, we've done Heritage Month. We've done.
You look at
Heritage
the
Caravan.
people who show up.
Yeah.
Okay. They are Ghanaians. The vast majority of those.
Sure.
There's a certain level of support for it because they understand, okay, this is good. This is something that could help us. Is there a certain Ghanaianness around it? I don't know. But at least there's a certain sense of, perhaps if we get this to work, it benefits the greater good.
All of us.
So let's push.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could expand on that as a starting point in terms of our small pockets and what we could do to grow this national character. But for me, where I said, I don't see us getting to the point of like a Japan, or because like it's thousands of years of doing that, or a Korea, or the Latvian example that was given, or Germany, or a China, where basically from school day one you have your little red book and the rules are being read out to you, so you are formed in a certain way. Or even with the US, for instance, where the way you are taught in school, where the way people talk about their country influences the thinking about who you are and what your character is as an American or as somebody from, or you take the people from France, for instance. What is the national character of France? It's perhaps one of the most diverse countries you will ever find. There are people from Mali, Senegal, Burkina Faso, France. We don't even know who is French. You understand? So it's not an easy question for me to answer in the modern day, but I think there are things perhaps that we can do to expand and develop a sense of what this national character could be. But what
I love about this conversation is how we are using this platform to consistently galvanize, momentum around an agenda of Ghanaianness, supporting the Ghanaian enterprise and the Ghana character in a way that is socially meaningful and economically empowering. We've done that throughout the year. We'll be crowning the year with more.